Hello, it is once again your friendly neighborhood children's librarian, Miss Cara, coming at you again from the comfort of my apartment. And I was wondering if anybody would enjoy a bedtime story tonight. Just in case you haven't seen the video that I made last week, I read the book called Friendshape, but because of copyright reasons, the video has to be private and unlisted on YouTube. But all you need to do if you want to watch it is please send a private message to the library and we will send you the link. But today it's a little bit easier access because I am reading The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter, and this book is in the public domain, meaning there's no copyright restriction on it, so I can read it out loud and make it public, and we're going to have some fun. Joining me today is Hortense. He's my buddy. He is my stuffed unicorn, so he is going to help me read this story of Peter Rabbit. Are you ready? Hortense, you ready, buddy? He said yes. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. And then I will try to show you the pictures. I know my lighting isn't great, but I'm trying. There they all are. There's little Peter down there. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor." Man, old kid stories they're really dark. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was, as you can probably guess, very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. He was just told not to do that. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. But round the end of the cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. That's not good. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. And then before I turn the page, you guys have to see this very scary picture of Mr. McGregor. Right? You do not want to run into that guy. But unfortunately, Peter did. It's not good. He's ginormous. Mr. McGregor came up with and I always fumble on this word, he came up with a sieve, one of our words of the day, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. So I think that means he was going to hit him with it. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. "Achoo!" Remember to cover your mouth when you sneeze. Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Well, how convenient for Peter. Mr. McGregor was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to chase after you. Good deal, I guess. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in the can, and there is this cute little picture down here of him. That's not great lighting. He's in the water can. After a time he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in the wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. I think he's running out of options. He's a mess. He's a mess. Peter is a mess. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. I agree. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. See, you get to hear my stumbles because I'm not going to edit this. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quickly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. And then before I turn the page, you guys have to see this giant cat. There she is, and I don't know if you can tell, but she has her tongue sticking out, so not only is her tail twitching, but her tongue is sticking out. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Whew, my heart's like pounding a little bit. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice, soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. He's got to explain that one. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. And that is our second word of the day, fortnight. Do you know how long a fortnight is? I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. And you know what? That is the end of the tale of Peter Rabbit. So I hope that was a good story to end your day. I once again want to say I miss everybody, and I can't wait till we all get to see each other again in the library. But for now, please continue to join me while I read you some books. All right? Good night, everybody.